Well, welcome everyone to the June 2nd Lifeboat Academy Coordination Circle, our first coordination circle in a while since we had holiday disruptions. And as is our custom, we start with a land acknowledgement and some grounding time. And would anyone like to do the land acknowledgement, or shall I? So shall I. Um, It's a beautiful time of year, and of course, I channel Norm Leach in my land acknowledgments as the core of acknowledging the land goes back to traditions that I understand are shared among many indigenous cultures of starting any time together by acknowledging the land first, or in the words of the who just I can never say it right. Roland, can you say it?
Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving prayer as a way of bringing our minds together. And what we are bringing our minds together around is the fact that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. And we call this thing the land. And the land was here before we were, and the land will be here long after we are gone. And in fact, we only exist as people because the land saw fit to that there was a niche for us to fill. And so we start our meetings that way as a reminder that ultimately our goal is to be a good relation, to fit into the niche that has been designated for us by this larger entity. And in doing so, by being a good relative, we are learning to live in reciprocity. We're learning to live in relation to all of our relations, and and a reminder that we're not the only game in town. And so we bring our minds together that our job here is to listen and to listen to the feedback that comes our way and to listen to the feedback that comes from inside and to be gentle with ourselves and with each other and to do everything that we can to heal harms where they occur and to do everything in our power to avoid causing harm and new harms as we move forward. And in doing this, we are tapping into an ancient wisdom that is as old as time itself, that has been discovered and rediscovered and preserved and defended through countless generations in countless cultures. And we are grateful that they have shared this understanding with us in all of the different ways, all of the breadcrumbs that have been left by the knowledge keepers that came before us. And and in doing so, we also have to acknowledge a debt that we need to pay where harms have happened and harms have been maintained and harms have not been allowed to heal. And so we do what we can, where we can, when we can to to figure out how to move towards right relations with ourselves and each other and our more than human relations. And so with that, I specifically acknowledge the WSÁNEĆ, who are the stewards and caretakers of this land and have been since time immemorial and for more generations than we could possibly count. And I am grateful that they are still here, and I applaud their efforts at revitalizing and rediscovering their own cultural roots, knowing that I benefit very much directly from the work that they are doing. And so I do what I can to support that work. And in part, I do that by doing this work. All righty. So we'll start with just a little check-in. And anyone have a good check-in question today? I can recycle the one from my first meeting this morning. We had a power out unexpectedly, and then the power came on just in time for the first meeting. So our check-in question was, where is the power surging for you? So let's run with that. And the circle as I see it is April, Ronnie, Roland, and me. So April, how you doing and where's the power surging? And I'll put that information in the chat.
Uh, the power is surging in my feet that are planting themselves even more firmly, I guess, on the floor and on the land. And over to, is it Ronnie? Who's next?
Yeah.
Power is currently surging through the dysfunction of my family, my extended family, and triggering a lot of anxiety
Mm.
and fear and stress. So,
Mm.
grateful for the reminder of breathing. Over to Roland.
The power is surging in my brain in trying to figure out how to make things work. Over to Ben.
I realized I think I re-asked this question because this morning I had a really bright and shiny answer to it. And so I want to it's almost like a mantra. Lately the power has been surging. I've been practicing the mantra of and that's no reason for me to be unhappy as kind of a tagline that I can put on anything. And I am finding that to actually I don't know if it creates new power, but it helps me not waste power beating myself up. And so just that reminder, my being unhappy and stressed and miserable doesn't do me any good and doesn't do anybody else any good. So that's where my power is surging. All righty. So we are there we go. No, that's not it. There it is. That's what we're doing. So we are having our coordination circle. It's the first one in a while. And generally we've done our grounding and our check-in. And I guess I want to check in on agenda before we get started. Since we haven't met in a while, we've got a lot of kind of catch up to do, just a reminder of where we are on different things. And I think our standard process works pretty well at helping us do that catch up. And so what I'm proposing is that we stick with our tried and true coordination circle process, North Star, taking a quick look at the seasonal plan and the calendar, going through the guilds and just sort of doing an update on where things stand there. And as we do that, gathering agenda items that we need to spend some time talking through. We already do have some items on the agenda, including we've got the Gumboot Boot Camp, a lot of work that's gone on around that. That's kind of, I think, our main focus right now. And a couple other things. So I also want to be mindful of time to make sure that we have enough energy left to kind of work through those things. But and likewise, I ahead of time will say I'm very distractible today. I'm feeling like my organizy brain is not at full capacity. So I'm looking for support from the circle in helping to manage our time together. And with that in mind, I'm going to say, let's go once through the circle just in terms of how we want to use this time together and see if my proposal, which is we more or less stick with the plan and be mindful of time, if that works, or if you have any alternatives that you want to propose or anything like that. So how does the agenda look to you? April, over to you.
Looks fine to me, and I would like to follow it through in the way it's written here. Thank you. Over to Ronnie.
I agree, and good enough for now, safe enough to try is coming to mind, as well as keep it simple. So, yeah, over to Roland.
I agree. Over to Ben.
Awesome. I'm already feeling better. So this is great. Let's check in with our North Star. And again, this is an opportunity to remind ourselves about why we're taking the time out of our day to be here and why we're taking our using our energy at building lifeboats. So again, the rules are you can answer all three or one or any combination of these questions that are calling to you. What are we trying to accomplish together? Why is that important? And where are we at the moment? And we'll do 2 rounds, 1 round to share initial thoughts, and then 1 round to respond to what you're hearing from others. April, over to, and you can always pass and we'll come back to you. April, over to you. What's your take on our North Star right now?
Well, I think we're together trying to learn how to be together differently. And we are using these sessions and our opportunities of being together as a way of practicing many things that are healthy, but take some repetition and some remindering to be able to do them. This is important because it helps me, I'm only speaking for myself, it helps me lead a healthier life. And where are we now? In the midst of a number of things that are developing in order to fulfill the first goal that I talked about. Over to my colleague and my friend, Ronnie.
We are developing I'll slow down a little bit.
Go ahead.
We're developing a process for collaborating that works and is shareable and replicable for anybody, no matter what they're doing. And it's important because we are all facing a massive predicament without any clear roadmaps. And the process helps us to slowly devise our own roadmaps. And right now we are reaching into our networks to invite people to Gumbo Boot Camp, which is a way that they can experience that process in a very hands-on, holistic way. Over to Roland.
I think that we are engaged in learning relearning how to be fully human. And that is important because it gives us an opportunity to learn how to live now, what we want to see come after. And where we are now, I think we are starting to get feedback that indicates that we're on the right track, and we're trying to widen that reach. Over to Ben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a way of restating, I agree with everything that's being said, and I think a way of restating what we're trying to accomplish together is to live responsibly. Actually, yeah. Trying to live in a way where we are responding to what is and what's being asked of us and what is possible. And I think that is part of what it means to learning to be fully human, is learning to be in relationship, um, and learning to be in flow. And why is that important? I think it's sort of like my check-in question. We can't afford to waste the energy that we have been wasting on perfectionism and absolutism and idealism. And I think, in a way, I feel like it's culturally, I think we've been slowly running down because we've been spinning our wheels, trying to go after something that probably wasn't worth going after in the first place. And where are we now? Yeah, I think we're getting feedback that we're on the right track. And I think it's learning to keep on keeping on. The continual lesson of learning to keep on keeping on. And the tricky balance of maintaining a vision and responding to the feedback. Yeah. So we've each had a chance to share, so an opportunity then to respond to what you're hearing, what's standing out for you, what's got your attention. Over to you, April.
There seems to be a load of alignment here, using some different words to express that feeling, but everybody's kind of saying it, I believe. And once again, I'm just struck with the power of returning to these questions as a grounding on the grounding, really. Over to Ronnie.
It seems like over the past few years, using this process, we've kind of separated the wheat from the chaff, as it were, and refined and focused. And that's cool. That's all. Over to Roland.
I think once again we're seeing the how circle functions in collecting, where we are similar and affirming where we are of one mind. Over to Ben.
Yeah, great. And it makes me think of the kind of the principle of science of part of the separating the wheat from the chaff, and it does feel now like I think we spent a lot of time figuring out what was wheat and what was chaff. And now it is about the remindering. It feels like it's about coming back to that thing. And and with that caveat of we never know, we never know the truth, but we can eliminate things that are false. And the more we eliminate the false, the closer we get to the true. Awesome. Really is amazing how effective Circle works. So looking at our annual plan and our seasonal plans, we've got I'm gonna do this a little bit differently because I think I'm feeling like sometimes you lose the forest for the trees. And so we can all see what's on the screen in terms of the seasonal focus. And that's really just sort of a selection of the annual plan, which, has more bullet point kind of things in there. But I think it's worthwhile to kind of, what's the one sentence version about what's our plan for the year or for the season? In that same spirit of, and you can always pass. And it's just sort of a, what's your take? What's your current take? What's true for you for now? April, over to you. How would you phrase our annual plan and our seasonal plan?
Trying to get to the 20 that gets us the 80. Over to Ronnie.
There's a lot that has been in the works for a long time, and this is not going to be a short summary. It's all kind of coming together in my head, but I'm specifically thinking about the bylaws. The bylaws officially acquiring the right to be on the land long term, and then the experience of the pharmastery and having people be there and be, on the ground. And there's been a lot of experiments and a lot of trying this and a lot of trying that, and things taking however long they take. And this year feels like not wrapping it up and putting a bow on each of those things, but those things coming into form a lot more fully in certain ways. I don't know if that makes sense. Both and. Yeah, over to Roland.
I'm going to ×2 what April said. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and I'm going to ×2 Ronnie and I feel like the word weaving comes up for me in that there are these sort of parallel, and I think there's 3 streams. There's the legal long-term right to be on the land. There's the pharmastery experience of what it's like to be here and why we care about having the land. And then there's that networked, having the land and what we're doing connected to a larger global context. And yeah, so it feels like we're advancing each of these things in parallel, and they are supportive and necessary for each other. So the network, the work that we're doing for outreach makes it easier for us to make a compelling argument to get the legal acquisition of the land, which enables the pharmastery experience to get deeper, because there are things we can't do if we don't know we're going to be here. So yeah, I feel like that feels good. Do we want to go another round, or are we feeling good that we can move on? Move on. Okay. And then for the calendar, so on for this week, tomorrow we have an agreement circle, a Europe time agreement circle. And then we have a Heartwork meeting on Thursday and a Farm Guild meeting on Friday. And then this weekend we have a 2-day workshop, and I keep spelling Norm Leach's name wrong. And so we have a 2-day workshop in the studio Saturday and Sunday, and Friday is 1 week to the first potential boot camp. And then if we look at next week, we've got a morning navigation session on Tuesday, nothing on Monday, outreach also on Tuesday, and a finance and legal meeting on Friday the 13th. Oh, isn't that fun? And possibly a Curiosity Guild. Oh, no, actually, I think I can't remember how, I think that schedule is flipped, but that's something we need to talk about anyhow. And if we get signups, we have the beginning of our first boot camp, but we don't have, last time I checked, we didn't have any signups. So those are the scheduling things on the calendar. And does anyone have anything to add or any questions about the schedule? Hearing nothing, I think we're good there. All right, so now that brings us up to guild reports. And here we go. Oh. There we go. So guild reports. First up, Heartwork and Philosophy. This is from last time. So what's the recent activity? Over to Roland.
Well, the meeting was canceled because we didn't have quorum.
Yeah.
So there is no recent activity. Yeah. And that brings up questions around how to move things forward. Yeah, when there are disruptions.
Mhm.
So back to you. Or I guess, are there any questions or comments?
Alrighty then, moving on to research and learning. Guess what? Similar story. A little bit, I have reached out to Benjamin Life and have not heard anything back, and which is relevant to a technology for recording badges. And the last meeting we had nobody. The meeting before that we had nobody. It may be a timing thing, but it's also the same question for the agenda, which is how do we move things forward, and how do we? It's also it's the same question and a sort of a sub question is it time of year? Is it an ebb and flow of kind of getting people interested and then eventually it kind of peters off? What's going on there? But there's not really anything to report except, oh, we did do, where did that happen? Roland and I did some work around badges. Actually, I guess at the Heartwork meeting, we came up with a short list of badges for the boot camps. Just trying to think, because if the boot camps are going to happen, we're going to have something to, some form there. So, yeah, any questions, comments? All right. Moving on to finance and legal. So we're expecting to get Bill's comments on the draft before the next finance meeting. And we'll see how that goes. And I think, again, I keep thinking this is more or less a standard multi-stakeholder co-op with a few little wrinkles. And it's surprising to me how hard it has been to communicate. The 95% of what we're doing is taking the standard template and then just saying, instead of a board, we're going to call it a stewardship council. And instead of a committee, we're going to call them a guild. And other than that, it looks largely like a normal thing. So anyhow, we'll see how that goes. We are waiting for Bill's comments on the draft. And then at our next meeting next week, we are hoping to review them.
I just
April?
want to comment that I found it helpful when you said this is basically a standard multi-stakeholder co-op type agreement with some changes. It sounds like in nomenclature, really, in the
Mostly.
wording and labeling. And that really helped me to understand kind of where you're at. It
Mhm.
framed it differently for me instead of being a mysterious thing. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. And that really is it. And it's sort of like there are some slight changes where the employee class, the employee class, because we aren't employees, it takes on a slightly different tone. or character. But there are investors and employees and customers and the community. Those are kind of our 4 stakeholder classes. Cool. And next, farm, food, and housing.
I think it was the same thing. Did we have a farm food and housing meeting? I think that one
I
was,
think we didn't.
I don't think we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So same old, same old. Um, and at the same time, we had a chat with a young woofer um, whose request fell between the cracks and was rediscovered, and he was still interested. And he might anyway. So we had a Zoom call with him. We have Ophelia, Angela, and Justin here now, and they are finding their space. And we are having some challenges. There is something going on with the water supply. It may be a leak between the well and the house. So we've been turning off the water when we don't use it. And it has been challenging to find a plumber, someone who will come and help us figure out what's going on and hopefully repair it. And we are going to be hosting an event this weekend, which is going to, and we'll be feeding people. And things are growing. Further tests on growing systems and methods are giving us useful information. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, I think. Ben, is there anything you'd like to add?
I did some color commentary in the notes as you were talking, but yeah, because it's not just the well, it's also the electricity. And basically we've received some shocking electric bills, and I called Hydro and they said, yeah, there's probably something malfunctioning on the property that's eating up a lot of electricity. You should find that. And so we're in the same boat of having to figure out how to get an electrician in who can give us some information and it's maddening. There's 3 plumbers. We've called around and around to try to get more options. And there are 3 people to call, and one contacted, or we contacted him and he said, nope, can't do it. And the other 2 we just haven't even heard back from. So it's very, very frustrating. And I will say that I'm gonna not only are the tests in the gardens working, and it may be we need to get better at the documentation, but to my eye, the grass, which I'm actually we need a better word for it, the turf, the green that is growing from the soil, which is a combination of grass and a bunch of other plants, is looking much better this year than it has in previous years. And I think there's a direct impact with where the goats are tending to hang out more, where we've done clearing and where the goats have done their work. Things are looking really lush, and it's also been a really good spring for that kind of stuff. But this is the feedback that we're getting on the ground has been really positive. So it's people feedback, and then more than human relation feedback seems to also be really good. Any questions or comments? April?
I just have a question about what you've just erased about a proposal being sent to the Heartwork Guild. I can't remember what that proposal might be.
It's the Gumboot Boot Camp.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, last up, outreach. Over to you, Ronnie.
So last week, our main goal was to create an outreach plan for the Gumboot Boot Camp, and we did that. We went over the blurb on the, I guess was on the website. Was that the blurb that we were like, we already have a blurb?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And then we talked about different organizations and groups, as well as individuals that we would like to reach out to talk about the boot camp and to invite people. And then I created or I'd already written a template for the boot camp invitations because I had emailed all the lifeboat builders about it. And so that has been tweaked a little bit to become a template that any of us can use to invite people. And it's available on the Asana task, and I can also email it to folks as well. And I also created a spreadsheet to track invites. Who's invited, when were they emailed, did they reply, was a follow-up sent, etc. So yeah, that all went well. And Ben and Roland, you were there. So is there anything else you want to add?
No, it's pretty complete. Yeah.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
It just occurred to me that if we're looking at an organism, that outreach and this sort of actually grounding stuff in action is lifeblood in this organism. So outreach it's incredibly important, because otherwise we're just talking to ourselves, and we might have a very nice set of things that we develop and talk about, but it doesn't actually go anywhere unless the blood system flows it through the organism. So I just had a metaphoric moment there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess so. Next steps are.
Oh yeah, next steps are people actually sending out emails and talking to people that they know, and keeping track of what happens either via the spreadsheet or, at our next outreach meeting, at our next coordination circle, giving an update about how those conversations are going. But the first boot camp's coming up quickly, so this week is a good time to start getting in touch with people.
All right, so we've had our guild reports, and so now it is talking through areas where we need to do engagement, and I think I'm going to change this to not just learning and research. So we've got the Gumboot Boot Camp coordination and outreach, and we've got the pay it forward appeal is basically Roland and I are tapped out, and we really are desperately in need of some infusion. And so what I was hoping is that we could start to send out a personal appeal. There's some related questions around like Patreon or we've got the Stripe account set up, and we've got, I can't even remember what the other fundraiser. So we've got fundraiser, we've got Stripe, and we could also talk about something like Patreon, but we really need some financial help. We need some money coming in. And then World Localization Day was an idea. Do we want to do something around that? So those are the 4 items that we have on the agenda for discussion. Is there, given the review that we've done, and are there any other topics that are coming up for folks? And I'm going to do once around. Are there any other topics, and do you have a sense of where to start, or, a sense about how to work through the items on the agenda? April, over to you. Thoughts?
No other items, but I do have some ideas about the low engagement. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, same. I like the order that things are in right now. I think it actually might make sense. So yeah, over to Roland.
I have no changes to propose. It seems good to me. Over to you, Ben.
Cool. All right. Well, let's do kind of a gathering consideration style around how do we respond to low engagement and see where that goes. So, April, over to you. Considerations, ideas.
Well, considering my own low engagement in my guild, I think we need to offer more options for time, to have a backup time for when there's time conflicts for individuals. Speaking to my own situation, there are times when there's conflicts that I have no control over, and sometimes they're unexpected. Sometimes I know what the dates are where there's going to be problems, but my motivation still remains high, and I'm still eager to plunge into various things, but I need to have another opportunity for the timing of it, I suppose. So that's what I could say, well, about my engagement, and that might filter through for other people too. Over to Ronnie.
Based on some conversations I've had recently, including with Ruth and Austin, there seems to be a shift for a lot of folks into wanting to put more energy into in-person community building because things are feeling really dire and intense, which I'm not saying that what we offer isn't valuable, because of course it is. I'm just noticing that shift is happening. And I myself have gotten more involved in in-person community recently because I'm feeling down here like we're feeling collapse. And so and it's spring. It's the weather, it's nice out, things are growing, things are changing. There's a lot of opportunities. I mean, everybody I know is like maxed out on commitments right now. So those are just some ideas. Yeah, that's all I got. Over to Roland.
He might be away for a second. So I'll jump in. I feel like well, I'm going to hold myself to gathering considerations. I'm going to park the people wanting to do more sort of in-person stuff, because I feel like there's again one of these kind of communication gaps in what we're actually offering. And but the one thing I want to say is in the CJ group, we've started to use Asana more, where and this is a group where people are really engaged. And before, there were email chains that were totally crazy making, because people would talk about 3 different things in one email, and there'd be 2 or 3 different email chains about the same thing. And it was really hard. And some people are, they don't want to use Asana as a technology, but they are hooked up through the email. So long story short, we're using the comments on the tasks. And so for conversations around getting things done, we don't have to be meeting in person all the time, because we can start some of the conversations and kind of get a sense of what the tasks are, and then work out the details in the comments around Asana. And for people who aren't using Asana, that works like an email chain. because when there's a new comment, they get an email, they can respond to the comment and to the email, and it adds it to the comment in Asana. So it could also be a technology. There might be a use of technology that makes it easier when we can't meet, that we can still be moving things forward. So that's my thought. Continuing the considerations, back over to you, April.
It seems to me that there's kind of an equation or a balance or something between engagement and outreach. Outreach to get more people and outreach to deepen the experiences of people that we have already. And maybe also limiting the time that we're asking of people so that in view of their other commitments, whether they're face-to-face or otherwise, that we ask for a shorter commitment, maybe like an intense half hour, or something of that kind. Is there a way to continue the engagement, but to shorten the time requirements? And over to Ronnie.
I don't know if we're asking too much time-wise. I mean, an hour-long meeting every 2 weeks isn't a really big ask. Scheduling is one thing, but like in terms of a time commitment, like I have so much going on, not to mention a whole heap of family stuff going on now, and I'm still managing to like come to these meetings and get my few tasks done, so I'm not sure. And I don't want to lose the meeting culture that we have developed, which is grounding and supportive and circle process and inclusive, so all of that said, I don't know if I have I think my instinct in this moment is there's a lot of change happening that also happens under the surface, kind of subconscious waves of change throughout communities, that may be shifting what people need or what people think they need. I also have a really big tension right now with social media, like as a whole, and outreach and reaching out to people and finding people and navigating out, like all of that stuff. I have reached a point where I'm like, I just don't want to do it. I'm over it. It drives me crazy. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel authentic. And like I said, like everybody I know who's doing community work is already doing so much and running on fumes. And so even though it's like, if they come to a navigation session, they might feel better after. But like for me to be like, hey, come to another Zoom meeting. Already, I feel like people's guards kind of come up or they have kind of a reaction. So I think all I can do in this share is to just kind of name some of that. Over to Roland.
I think I'm picking up on something that Ben said, and right now I can't quite remember what it is. It is a misunderstanding of what we're offering, because well, so what we're offering is to help people make connections more stronger and more easily. So yeah, I'm just thinking of um, uh, what Ronnie was saying about Ruth and Austin, and there's coming to the guilds, and that's being interested in uh, being part of the building of the guilds. And then there are the navigation sessions and the agreement circles and the connect the dots. We haven't talked about the connect the dots in a while, but that's also something. And I mean, in a way, all of them are supportive of building stronger communities, connections. Uh, uh, um, I'm thinking of my dear mom, who said that she started to realize that she was using some of our ways of speaking to each other during circles accidentally in some of her more difficult meetings. And that's the thing that kind of thing, and it was working. And that's the kind of thing that we're offering. So how do we, what is it in the way that we talk about things that make people think? I mean, we need people, we need more engagement to make the guilds work. Um, and at the same time, um, yeah, anyway, so I'm just trying to process through this. I'm finding this incredibly upsetting. Um, and um so I'm working with that, and I'm um also anyway, I'm trying to work with all of it and trying to find what's useful in it. Um yeah. And even just in talking to people, how 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 are you talking to people? Like, is it inviting people to another Zoom meeting, or is it saying there's this thing that really helps, that makes things go more smoothly, or is supportive, and I'd like for you to come? Is that another way of talking to people? So how are we talking to people? Uh, what's the like, I'm thinking of psychological inoculation and trickster principles, helpful trickster principles. So a bit of a mishmash. So I'll just pass to Ben.
Yeah, I'm thinking and I think one of the challenges in all of that is there is no one wants to eat their broccoli kind of thing. Um, I'm also aware that the idea that I had for how this would work was that in the spring, people would be thinking about how they wanted to engage their local online and on communities. And there would be a plan of what that engagement would look like locally there. It was really the guilds are an opportunity to see how we work so that you can do it in your own lifeboat building. And that message somehow does not get across. Um, and it didn't happen. And that's the other thing too. And I think in part it didn't happen because um, a lot of the people who've been interested aren't quite at the level of being able to make a plan. So, I think another way of saying this is a key element of what we're saying that you should do is to set up an experiment and then run your experiment. And we weren't able to get people to set up an experiment.
Mm,
And so, that was the idea was by April or so, people would have a plan, an experiment that they would be running in their local community where they would be trying to do some of this stuff. And that's it. We just couldn't make it happen. And in part that I think was the not ironically, I think we didn't ask enough of people. Or we didn't make it clear. I think maybe I also don't know, and I find this it feels like one of these Gordian knot kinds of things. Because I think we can communicate with people, but that's not the same as really being able to get a commitment and follow through. And yeah. So I mean, this has always been the point, is we come together online to provide moral and peer support so that people can do the on the ground work in their local community. And yet it gets framed as an either or. And I don't know how to overcome that, because it's such a an ingrained way of people thinking. And likewise, I think that investment thinking in terms of, you spend 2 hours a month doing an agreement circle to help you do your on the ground work more effectively in between. It may not be directly towards your project, but eventually it is towards your project. And I don't know how to communicate that. I mean, I guess I want to say is, I don't know that we're doing anything wrong in how we're communicating things. I think, kind of to use that language, it may be that we're in a predicament. You can't really get people to see it until they've done it, and you can't get them to do it until they've seen it. Anyhow, just a thought. Over to you, April.
Well, I think there's a number of things that are sort of growing as shoots out of this conversation right now. I think we need to be reminding again about the fact that this will support mental health and respite, both. So by doing a session, you are able to step out of your pressure cooker, because that might be what it feels like to a lot of people, and you're stepping out into something else for a little while. And when you step back, then the heat is different. The temperature's turned down. You've let little steam out of your steam vent thing on your pot, and so on. And while you're doing that, you're getting both support and practical tools, which you talked about, Ben. Really, I think we need to be clear about what it is that's on offer, and also more clear about how to set up experiments. What does that mean? That might be scary for people to hear that. And they think, oh, that's not going to help. What's that? I don't even know how to set up an experiment. And how does setting up an experiment help me with the mutual aid that I'm feeling so pressured to give these days? So I think a little more clarity about it, maybe some storytelling about this in a way. And yeah, that's the way that I'm starting to think. Again, iteration and reiteration. They need to surface again, I suppose. Over to Ronnie.
When Ruth and I were trying to get people to sign up for our 10-week grief support program, nobody signed up. We had 2 people sign up and then back out even. Yeah. People did not want to make the commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But what we did see was when we had one-off events, we get 3 to 5 people per event, and that was paid. They paid to be there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there's something there, perhaps, about of these focused events where it's like, you will come and you will get this. We were very clear. It was like, it's an hour and a half. It's a grief circle. You get to talk about all the overwhelming stuff. And so I'm wondering about, we have so many tools we offer. We have these webinars, we have these very kind of focused skills that we can share with people. Maybe that is a way to get people, you know, bums in seats versus a semester long commitment. It just seems like for whatever reason, that's freaking people out and they feel like they can't commit. And I think that that could still be really valuable because, you know, I use tools I've learned from the Lifeboat Academy all the time in groups. And potentially, I'm not exactly sure how that connects to the guild engagement, other than it's possible that somebody comes to one of those events and they're like, I love this. I want to learn everything you have to teach. And we'll say, great, join a guild. Because we will put into practice literally every single tool that we use in the guild processes. So yeah, those are just some ideas based on what I've learned very recently. You know, that was a very frustrating thing to go through. We put months and hundreds of hours of work into that program, and it just didn't fly. So, yeah, over to Roland. Roland.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. Uh, so I'm noting what Ben was talking about in terms of being in a predicament, and so I want to I think I want to take that seriously, and I want to sort of let it simmer in my mind in terms of what that means. Because I noticed that I am going into you know, immediately into problem solving. And I think anyway, we're still gathering considerations. Um, but I find that what I was hearing is um, uh, asking for a longer commitment, more than one. I think more than one session makes people pause and hesitate, maybe. So that's what I was hearing, that there's more activity when it's looks like it's a one-off. Um, and I think that's kind of interesting, and I can feel the trickster starting to nudge me because would it be possible to set things up as one-offs and at the end and then for the next step, um, anyway, I'm just curious about that. I was also thinking about um, it may be we've gotten people who got really excited really quickly, and I don't know if this is an expression or if it even makes sense, but Roman candled, you know, sort of burst burst really brightly and then kind of faded away. And so I was thinking for people who show, and some people have stayed, you know, uh, but more often than not. And I was wondering about actually badging people who are interested in more, where it is okay, come to X number of events, and then we'll talk about guilds or something like that. Or you can attend guilds if you want to, but to become a member, you have to jump these hoops or something like that. And I think that's not only for us in terms of uh, building expectation or or whatnot. I think it might also be good for the people who are interested, um, as a way for all of us to check the the um the 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 realness of anyone's involvement. Like
Mm.
giving people a chance to actually check in their lives to see, am I really that interested in this, or can I make this kind of commitment or whatever else? So other, just more blabbering for consideration. Yeah. Over to Ben.
You know, I'm willing to try things, and this is where this is also part of the predicament is, you know, we are a small number with not much support, and um, all of the things that we're talking about require doing all sorts of groundwork and legwork, and then I've just been too many times. Well, and it's also I this is reminding me of, you know, forcing people to pay for something, even if you don't need them to pay for it, is a way of testing their commitment, and also getting more commitment. Um, I think that the my personal limitations in all of this are I have spent so much of my life trying to convince, and this is part of the challenge of doing the Emotus work with groups with paying clients, is I often have to spend more time convincing whoever the decision makers are to even try it than it takes me to do the work. And then, you know, from a practical point of view, you know, I can't spend more unbillable hours convincing somebody to hire me for the billable hour, you know, for a lesser number of billable hours than can sustain me for doing all of the other work. And maybe this is just, you know, maybe this is the predicament of it that we're um and I wish that there was one of the things that a technique I developed with some clients uh was really like, well, then, you know, try it your way and then let me know how that goes. And you know, I wonder if there is a way of kind of saying, um, are you burned out? You know, does it feel like you're running faster and faster and farther, falling further and further behind? Are you sick of peopling all over the place? You know, and you know, and then not really even say anything more than that. So come to this webinar. And you know, maybe that is part of the trickster thing, is going. It's interesting with Angie and Justin being here. They are they're providing all sorts of really glowing feedback about the support that they're getting and how the impact that it's having for them. And we've been kind of, and the interesting thing is the feedback often comes as, you guys are so great. And we keep, and you know, we like, you guys know everything and we want to sponge up what you know. And we keep trying to, or you know, jokingly, we're now joking about managing expectations, because it isn't that what we're offering isn't great, but I want to not, and maybe this is the thing, maybe I just need to let go of this. I don't want to buy into the panacea market.
Yeah.
You know, this is how everything is offered. That this is the magic bullet that will make everything better, and all you know, no muss, no fuss, just follow these three simple steps: aim, act, reflect. You know, and maybe we just buy into it, you know, or it's not buying into it. Maybe it's the trickster principle of, this is what you sell people on, because this is what they know, but then how do you manage the expectation that they don't feel deceived when we're offering what we're offering, which is simple but not easy. Yeah, I'm not really sure where to go with this either. And I'm also looking at the time. So let's continue at least one more round just to kind of see if we can wrap it up. And we can go more than one round if we need to. So over to you, April.
Well, I liked your idea about, you know, just bluntly saying, are you tired of peopling? Are you tired of whatever? Are you feeling burned out and like your energy's not going where you want it to, and that you're not getting a chance to use your energy in the way that you know is helpful, and offering some one-offs around that. The other thing that just occurred to me is that I kind of understand how guilds work. And I'm not sure it's not something that anybody much in North America who's employed sees as a way of doing work. I think I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking of where that is seen as as an advantage, or even what it is. Now, in Europe, in UK, and in Europe, the idea of guild is understood and accepted, and there's still many professions who call themselves guilds, and so there's more of an innate understanding in the old world, so to speak, of what that is, for good and for bad. I mean, there's some really awful guilds in the old world, but I think we need to talk about the guild experience a bit, or need to do a workshop of some kind that says, we think we're a guild. Do you want to come and see what that looks like? Or something to invite people in just simply to see what that is, because I can't see a lot of people joining it without them kind of understanding that a bit more. So that's just something that occurred to me. And I totally support guilds and guild working as an experience. That's what I have to say. And I think we should continue this conversation. And I'm passing over to Ronnie, who's on the bottom of my screen, but next in the circle.
I just wanted to, well, first thing is a note about the charging money, not charging money thing. The way that Ruth and I did it was a sliding scale with a $0 solidarity option. And everybody paid. Nobody paid $0. So there was something to that model that showed that this is a valuable thing we're offering. The default is to pay, but if you can't pay, you're still welcome. So I liked that model. Yeah. The other thing that I'm thinking about is I'm in community with a lot of people who are already organizing, who are already running meetings, they're already doing groups, they're already thinking about community and collaboration. And it perhaps, rather than introducing the build a lifeboat model, it's here are tools to help you do what you're already doing better. Because many of these people, they're already building a lifeboat. And so I think for some people, the metaphor is useful. For other people, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is the tools that we offer. So there's kind of a trickster principle there of like, we are the Lifeboat Academy. We're not saying, here, build a lifeboat, come up with a plan. We're saying, here are some tools, try them out. Oh, you're doing things better. Oh, you're having more alive and productive conversations. That's great. That's why we're here. And I think also part of this is people are attracted to novelty because we've all been raised in this consumerist culture. We want the shiny, pretty thing. the exciting thing. It makes neurons fire in our brains. So how can we kind of play into that? But what they'll end up learning is how to do an emergent process, how to be iterative, how to communicate, how to be inclusive. And the more things they come to, they will slowly learn kind of the opposite of the consumerist culture. So kind of a slow drip into thinking like a guild, how to run a guild without being like, here's a guild, it's kind of like a backdoor entrance into what we're doing. These are just ideas. I'm not saying we should do any of it, but yeah, over to Roland.
Yeah, all of that is again really interesting, and I'm also hearing what Ben is saying about our just our current people resources and time. And so I'm wondering about, and what I was hearing and what you were saying, Ronnie, was, and I'm getting tired, so I'm actually hoping that I can maintain this train of thought. Uh, what I was hearing was, well, first of all, I think I'm I've long been a fan of the Trickster, and think that he's a valuable um, companion or inspiration, a teacher, a valuable teacher, and oh shoot, oh come on, man. No, I can't keep my thoughts straight. Um, it had something to do with Trickster. It had something to do with Ronnie, what you were just saying. Um, oh, uh, could it be that? It's sort of what do we already have, and how can can we just tweak the way that it's talked about? I take the point, and I think that this is where the Trickster is coming forward for me, that instead of going right for it of be a lifeboat, because the idea of the lifeboat was to create a network, a mutually supportive network. And it may be going right for that point is too direct, and adopting a trickster. So then what is that trickster? And engaging people in the offerings that we have at the webinars. I agree, and that stuff, and then introducing the idea of networking, and yeah. And I hope that what I just said isn't opening up a whole can of worms, because I don't think I can deal with a whole can of worms at the moment. Over to Ben.
Yeah, well, and it is opening up a whole can of worms for me. And uh so, part of the thing with the lifeboat building was, at least on my part, I didn't want to try to brand something yet again an alternative to Regenerate Cascadia or this network or that network, which is like, come and join my cause. And together we'll rule the world. And likewise, I think part of the idea of we never said, we always said you're already building your lifeboat. And part of one of the things that I see consistently is, yes, there are people out there who are doing sort of community organizing stuff. A lot of them do not, The
Yeah.
people who think of themselves as community organizers generally have very fixed ideas about what that means, and I don't want to battle that because I don't want to work with it because I get run down by it. And so I don't want to try to convince anybody of something. And there are also my take is as things are unraveling, the people I'm most interested in are the people who suddenly have found their world falling apart and want to do something. Like this was a large part of it was people keep saying the world's a mess, what can I do? And this was the answer to the question, here's what you can do. People keep asking that question, and there's a really clear answer of what you can do. So that's, for me, that's kind of the thing is everyone saying, well, what can I do? What can I do? And then you say, here's what you can do. And they say, oh, not that, and likewise, I think we can offer these tools, but every time we do, we've done this before. We've offered these webinars and it's really hard to get people to sign up, even when it's a one-off. And there's no further commitment, and it's framed in, here's how you can improve what you're already doing. So I think everything that everyone is saying is true, and I'm not sure what to do with it all, because it kind of just feels like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I kind of feel like maybe there's just people are no damn good and nothing will work, like people are just sort of addicted to their addictions, and they're more interested. I think that's the other thing too, that in terms of so the direct woofer experience and where a lot of the challenges I've found in kind of bringing people on board is there is such a desperation to have the thing that the thing that limits people's ability to think outside of that. And so, part of the tricking is tricking people into welcoming the challenge as, that the problem is the solution. Anyhow, and we're actually past time. So, and we've only gotten through the first thing, but I don't think this is bad necessarily. But I am wondering what feel like the next steps, like what do we do with this conversation and moving it forward. So still in the spirit of I'm not looking for anybody to have like a clear, I think this is what we need to do, but how do we put a bow on this conversation and figure out what comes next? Any thoughts for the good of the cause? Over to you, April.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts about this. We have a sterling body of work, sterling and distilled body of work. There's not a darn thing wrong with it. We just need to connect it to some more folks. We need to invite people to float their boat, not just build it, and to feel a sense of relief in doing that somehow. There's some language that we can start thinking about and thinking about what does that mean. I mean, I've just had some terms pop into my head during this conversation, of which I think this is part one. I think there's a part two of the conversation. So the words that have popped into my head: quick magic / slow drip. It's the all and everything principle, right? Float your boat. The tide is changing. And then the last thing that popped into my head is can of worms. Let's invite people into the can of worms. When I was being a farmer, I had a worm farm, amongst other things, which was located right underneath the rabbit's cage, where the rabbit poop fell onto the cleverly disguised cardboard, and where the worms grew. And I didn't even have to make them grow. They just did it themselves. Then you could scoop them out. Used to have a soup tin just scoop out the worms and then I would give them to my friends for presents. A soup can full of worms. Well, you can imagine how well it went down with the urbanites. But for the people who wanted to do something on a little scale or make everything grow just a little better, even in that flower pot, it was a revelation. So thinking about that, also thinking that what I'm hearing is tired people.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. What do we do when we're tired? And Ben, you and I had a conversation about rest. So one of the things is to develop that webinar on rest that I have the bare bones of sitting on my desk right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that might be helpful. And continuing to talk. I wish that we could meet around a meal. I wish we could start our meetings, then stop, have a meal, preferably cooked by Roland, and then continue on. That would help with my energy level at this time of day. And I do get food for thought, food for my heart, all sorts of food out of this. Anyway, on to Ronnie. Do you want some worms, Ronnie? Could I mail you some worms?
Well, also tired. And I'm having thoughts about, I don't know if people want webinars right now. I think they want to be relational and they want some hand holding and they don't want a big commitment. So I'm proposing that I can go through our webinars, go through all the different kind of events we offer, and kind of look at it all through the lens of thinking about the people I'm in community with right now, thinking about myself, and the kinds of events, the framing of what we're offering that seems like it might meet people's needs more and be more attractive.
Yeah.
And see what I come up with that would be fairly simple to tweak some things, fairly simple to implement, and also charge money for. I think, like, let's try it. All proposal. I don't know, are we gonna try to go into any of the other items at all? Because I have some quick ideas for those as well. But I can stop for now and we can wrap up this portion. Over to Roland.
Well, around going over ideas, I guess I could. We also have people here, so I have to make food. And I can listen. I think I want for us to use sociocracy more seriously. I'm hearing some ideas for proposals and for people who are making proposals to actually make a proper proposal. And so do we want to use sociocracy in that way? Yeah, and because the idea behind it, I suppose, is to make things work better and faster. So, over to Ben.
I think the fatigue is real, and even if we weren't tired from the day, we're pushing up against the limit of mental capacity in one go. So I'm going to propose that we don't continue the conversation, but actually, why don't we try a mini, let's use Asana. And so what I can do is we already have tasks for these. I can make sure that we're all included as collaborators on the tasks, and then we can try that out with the using the comments to, have that conversation. So, um, uh, and what I think I'd like to do is see whether or not we can have kind of a phase 2 of this meeting scheduled before the next 2 weeks. So, when can the four of us continue this conversation? When does that make sense? Later this week. My week is pretty open. Um, and I think actually kind of really thinking we're just what's the word? We're adjourning. I think that's a form. Anyhow, the formal language is we're not closing the meeting. We're just sort of pausing it, and then we'll come back and we'll sort of finish the agenda later, and then we can see what we can do offline in the interim. Yeah, so I guess for me, I think one of the next steps that I would put down is finding a continuation time. And I don't think that needs to be right away. In fact, I think there's an advantage in giving ourselves, a few days just to let some of these ideas perk and see if anything comes up, see if some things fall away and some things perk up. And I guess really the question is who's going to take the lead in finding a time? Or how do we want to find a time? Do we want to try to do it right now? I'm going to stop sharing here. Does anyone have any availability? My availability this week is pretty open. So I don't know if anyone else, what other people's availability looks like. None for you. You've got your conference thing coming up.
Yeah.
When would you be available?
Next week.
Next Monday?
Yeah.
So we just do sort of like an in-between meeting?
I have a standing meeting at 5 Pacific, I think, on Monday that I have to be at also.
Okay.
Um, this week is not doable.
Okay.
Next week, I don't know.
If this week, if this week isn't doable, then that gives us this week to find a time next week.
Okay.
So I think I think what we'll do is I think let's just literally pause here, give us each a chance just to say a quick goodbye, and then we'll figure out a time that works. And and this is totally, anyhow, yes, a chance to say goodbye. And so last thoughts for the good of the cause. April, over to you.
Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for coming up with things that are puzzling and that are a little bit complicated, maybe not complex. And thank you for the opportunity of being together around this stuff. And I'll look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think even though it was long and we didn't get to everything, it was a very important, timely discussion that will hopefully lead to some evolution of stuff and things happening. So we will see. Over to Roland.
Yeah, I just want to say in your deliberations for times when you are available, I'm generally pretty open. But as you know, Wednesdays are no-goes for me, and Tuesday after 2:30. Otherwise, I'm completely open. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I feel demoralized, but that's not a bad thing. I feel like this might be one of those the problem is the solution, and kind of being able to unpack it and, unpack it, lean into the process. It's sort of like trust the circle, trust the ongoing feedback. It's all an experiment anyhow. That kind of thing. And then just as an aside, I'm kind of channeling my brother, the doctor. If your grandma had really quickly onsetting dementia, one of the first things to look at is any change in medications.
She's
You
been to
know,
the doctor multiple times in the last month. She had a UTI, it cleared up. She was more lucid, it came back. She's like full on. My mom's been at the hospital with her all day,
yeah,
all the time.
that's
So
that UTI. This is, I don't understand the chemistry of it. My brother was saying and a lot of times they go undiagnosed because it's compound interactions that
yeah,
have to do, and almost always they follow infections. So there's
yeah,
something about the antibiotics that people go on, and it messes up the other medicine. So anyhow, it could have something to do with just the combination of medicines that she's on.
yeah. And the people living with my grandmother don't give her the right meds. It's like ongoing medical neglect. So it's a huge mess. It's a huge
Yeah.
mess. And
Well,
like,
anyhow, I'm sorry you're going through it, and um
yeah, it's
yeah,
a lot.
life, it's like that. Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
Everyone, I love you all, and I appreciate that you are part of my life, and I really welcome our conversations, and keep the faith.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
y'all. Bye.
Bye.